Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about the owner.
No,
He's a
Tim
disgrace,
Couch, I want you to do
there's nothing
two
we
things.
can do about it.
Grade Deshaun Watson last week, and then his overall grade after yesterday.
Well, I thought last week was obviously a struggle. You know, he was inaccurate with the football, and he just kind of looked out of place a little bit in his first start in over 700 days. So you would expect that. But I thought he made a huge jump. You know, I really did. In week 2, I thought he looked much more like himself. You know, we saw him extending plays, making tough throws down the middle of the field, much more accurate with the football. You know, I thought that was kind of more, you know, like himself. You know, I really thought he made a big jump. So I would probably give him, you know, probably a D in his first game and probably a C+ or, you know, B- in his second game. You know, I think he did make a big jump. You know, the offense seemed to be clicking a little bit more. You know, he kind of understood what was going on, going to the right place, and more importantly, looking more accurate with the football than he did in week 1. Or his first week, I'm sorry.
Did you see him missing open guys yesterday? Because I thought Adam Archuleta did a good job on the broadcast, sort of highlighting that there were guys running open right in front of him, and he just didn't find them with the football.
He did miss a couple, you know, but I think you can go watch any quarterback play, you know, any game on a Sunday, and they're not going to see them all. You know, they miss a few. You know, I watched Tom Brady play yesterday, and he missed a few. You know, he also underthrew quite a few deep balls that were open in that game where they got blown out. So, you know, he did miss a few, but you know, that's just part of it. I think that's just part of the game, and you know, I think as he gets more reps within this offense, you know, he'll start to see those plays a little more. And but certainly he had some opportunity for some big plays there.
Hey, Tim, is Tom Brady done, by the way? Are we all admitting Tom Brady's done?
Yeah, I'm careful on that one.
Hey, Tom Brady's done. He's done, and he looks weird. What happened to his face? What's going on with his face?
Tim, until Tom Brady hang it up in that 5-year period
he's
where they put that jacket on,
garbage division.
I'm not stepping on
stinks
I'm
now.
gonna wait it out.
Hey, Tim, let me ask you a question because you just touched on
We've
it.
done that before.
Talk to these guys about, as a player, when the game slows down for you, right? How your special talents really become apparent to others when the game is in slow motion. You're picking people apart at that point. Talk about it from the QB position.
You know, it's a different feeling. You know, when the game starts to slow down for you and you start feeling more comfortable, then you're out there just reacting. You know, you're not thinking so much. You know, early on, you know, I can remember, you know, my first, you know, few games in the NFL, making that transition from college to the NFL, and it seemed like things were going 1,000 miles an hour. And you can't be the player that you want to be. You can't react that way. You're just out there thinking so much. You know, so when we start to see things a little better, the game starts to slow down. It really just your instincts take over, your athleticism takes over a little bit, and then you start to kind of see, you know, the total package, and you can become the athlete and the player that you're capable of when you don't have to sit there and think so much. It's just becomes reactionary for you.
Tim, I got something for you. I'm gonna need you to keep it real with me here. I'm gonna need you to go ahead and tell me from your playing experience. We haven't even really touched on this, man. The Browns come out in the game. I think Watson hits a deep out route, maybe 25 yards. He comes back, hits another route. They get down in the red zone area, and they bring in the backup quarterback to run a corner route, and he hasn't. As a competitor, first and foremost, in the starting quarterback, how does that make you feel that you coming off the field?
It's disrespectful.
And you got a rhythm. You feeling like, oh, I saw a couple plays. I got some success now. Tell me what would be going through your mind if you were in that circumstance.
I'd be absolutely furious. You know, like you said, Deshaun was looking great, man. He had some great throws on that drive, and you get down to a 4th and 1 situation, and you're going to bring a quarterback who's ice cold off the bench and ask him to throw a tough route, a corner route, on a critical down and situation in the game. And when you got a quarterback who's out there who's filling the game, filling the flow of the game, and who's throwing the ball well, I would have absolutely been furious. You know, I thought when Jacoby came in, like everyone else, this is going to be a quarterback sneak or, you know, maybe some type of gadget play. But to have him, you know, come off the bench ice cold, like I said, and try to throw that route, which is a tough route to throw anyway, and try to hit that is a tough ask for Jacoby to come off the bench and do. But I'm sure Deshaun didn't appreciate that, didn't like that. I know I wouldn't as a player. I would have given the coach a you know, kind of a little side-eyed look on that one. But, yeah, I didn't understand that play call at all, man. Not at all.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it made plenty of criticism deserved it. And yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't have brought Jacoby Brissett in at all, but if I did, I'm gonna run him. But I don't know. There's just so many. People complain about the penalties. Tim, did you think any of the penalties were bad calls? I know there were a lot of penalties, but I thought the calls on both teams were actually all the calls were good. I don't know. I thought the referees did a good job, even though it was boring to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There were a lot of flags. It seemed like there was a flag on almost every play, but you go back and you watch the replay, and you're like, yeah, that was, it looked legit to me. That was a holding, or whatever they were calling, hands to the face one time when Clowney got a sack and it got called back because of hands to the face. That was obvious as well. So it was a sloppy game, really, by both teams. A lot of penalties, but like you said, I think most of them were probably justified.
Tim, sorry, Jason. Let me just do this. I'm curious from your perspective, like. Obviously, the Bengals' offense has not looked good against the Browns at all. Like, Joe Burrow looks great against everybody else. He hasn't looked good against the Browns. He played better from the second quarter on. But talk about that adjustment. Like, you're going into the game an hour and a half before the game. You think you got your full complement of receivers. And then Higgins tweaks his hamstring in warm-ups, and Boyd dislocates his finger on the second play. Obviously, the offense was really out of sync for the Bengals the first quarter and a half. How tough an adjustment is that as the game's starting?
Extremely tough. You go all week with a game plan with those guys, and then all of a sudden, you don't have them. So there's a lot of adjustments that go on. But, when you have a guy like Jamar Chase and you can just go back and throw him the football, especially if the Browns aren't willing to double team the guy, the reads become simple for a quarterback at that point. If you see a two high safety, more than likely probably going to be a zone look. You're going to go through your reads. But if you see a single high safety and there's man coverage out there, there's really no read to it. You trust that your guy, Jamar Chase, is going to beat Denzel Ward or whoever it is lined up on him, and you just give him a chance. So, it really simplifies the game. It makes it easy for a quarterback when you have a guy like that on the outside who can just, dictate coverage. It's, like I said, if they roll to him, they double team him, you go somewhere else. If they don't, you take your chances with him one-on-one. So, but it was a big adjustment. You could see they were trying to work through that process of losing those two guys so late. Before the game started. So tough deal for them, but they managed to do it, and they put up a lot of points, and their offense really got rolling there, especially in the second half.
So, Tim, tell me this, right? You warming up, you got a game plan, we done strategized all week how we're going to go against this team, the Bengals, and then when you find out the information that Higgins is not playing and Boyd is not going to be in after the second round, who makes the adjustment? Who says, scrap that? We're going to double Chase from here on out. Whose call is that? Is that Stefanski's call, or is that Wood's call?
I would say a little bit of both. I would say more than likely it'd be more on the defensive coordinator to say, we have to stop their best player first and foremost. You guys mentioned it earlier, the reason the Patriots had so much success for all those years was that's what they did. It's simple football. You stop their best player and you make someone else beat you. And, for the Browns just to sit there and let Jamar Chase have whatever he had, 10 catches or so, and just continue to catch those 15-yard out routes and just all those little easy throws he was getting. Like, at some point, you got to come up and say, all right, we're going to stop this guy, especially if they're down two wide receivers. Let's make somebody else beat us. Like, Jamar Chase can't beat us. Like, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase looked like they were in 7-on-7 in practice. Like, it was too easy, man. It was just pitch and catch. So you got to make that adjustment. And to me, that would probably come more from the defensive coordinator saying, I can't sit back and watch this anymore. Like, double team the guy, roll coverage to him every time. And if somebody else beats us, then shake their hand. But, you can't let their best player just sit there and have a field day on you like that.
Tim, I want to go back to the holdings that you were talking about. You said you thought all the penalties were legit. Both said the same thing. I was talking to a couple of linemen after the game who felt like the officials were trying to set a tone early almost and control the game. That's something we don't ever really talk about or think about. How often does that happen where the officials sort of make their mark early, especially with linemen, on what's allowable and what's not? Because it got to the head of some of the linemen of like, what can I do? What can't I do? What's allowed? What's not allowed today? Because they felt like they wanted to go right at the Bengals. The best way to run the ball was to go right at them. But some of those early holding calls sort of threw off a couple of the linemen.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a very good point. I think each game the refs are going to call it a little differently, and you kind of get that feel, that vibe from them early on in the process. And you say, well, this is what I can get away with today. Some officials will let the the little grabbing and holding a little bit go on, and other officials are going to call it every time they see it. And really, they could probably throw a flag on about every play if they wanted to. This officiating crew was a little more willing to throw those flags, and so for the offensive linemen, defensive linemen especially, you really got to adjust to how they're calling the game. You know, if they're going to call those, you just can't do it. You can't get away with it like you maybe did in the previous game, or more so throughout the season. But it is an adjustment. It's tough on those guys. It's really tough when they come out there and they're trying to like you said, establish that run game. They're trying to fire off the ball, trying to be aggressive, and the officials just aren't really letting them use their hands and pull and tug on these guys like some officiating crews do. So it's a huge adjustment for those guys for sure.
I want to go back real quick to the Jamar and the double in the conversation. Whose call is it, Joe? It's the coordinator in that. You've played for offensive coaches before. Chris Palmer was an offensive coach, offensive background. How often does the head coach go over to the DC and say, change that? I don't like what we're doing there. It doesn't look like that ever happens here. I watch fairly frequently, and it doesn't look like Kevin and Joe talk very much at all in the moment. Maybe they are when I'm not looking. But how often does the head coach go to the DC and say, hey, we need to change something? Or does he leave it with full autonomy?
I think everybody's a little bit different. Later in my career, I had Butch Davis, who was obviously a defensive-minded coach, had been a defensive coordinator and things. So he would get involved on the defensive side of the ball quite a bit. And he really didn't say, and vice versa, he really didn't say much to Bruce Arians, the offensive coordinator, because he kind of let Bruce run that. I think it probably comes down to what side of the ball their background is and whether they feel more comfortable. They've been a defensive-minded coach or an offensive-minded coach. They kind of lean more towards helping out on that side and let the other side of the ball kind of do their thing. Has been kind of my experience. They certainly will say stuff here and there, but they definitely have they become more vocal in what they feel most comfortable with, I think.
So you will agree that the head coach is the manager of the operation, right? Like I've never been involved on a team where the head coach didn't have the ultimate say when something was going sideways, right? And willing to put his imprint out there and say, hey, we're not doing that, right? I don't see that happening here, right? And if I'm a player, I just have to be honest with you. If I'm a player, this is nonsensical to me, right? Because we're not making the adjustments that need to be made, right?
But Tim did just say that doesn't happen with the opposite. In his experience,
I'm telling you, at any level out here,
but
right?
Brad, basketball is very different.
I talk about just
to Brad's point,
hold on, Jay. In my everyday life, I got 7 departments that work for me.
Yeah.
Who ruling it? I can override anybody here if I see the ship veering off course.
It's still his responsibility.
Right, but in the moment of the game, I'm not saying it. Tim just said that in his experience in the games, the head coach is not going to get involved with the defensive coordinator if he's an offensive coach or vice versa.
Kevin hasn't sat in on all the defensive meetings all week, so what's he going to add on Sunday in terms of changing?
But I
agree with the point.
You think if Belichick is watching his defense get roasted, roasted by the game's best receiver, you think he's not going to go to the defense and say, maybe a double would work?
That doesn't make sense.
I'm not asking him to go from a 4-3 to a 3-4 for crying out loud.
It would be Belichick talking to the offense.
Okay,
right.
Do you think Belichick's never done that?
He probably has, but I don't know. I'm not saying it.
But
Tim just said that's the way it goes.
But did Bill do that in year 3 of being a head coach?
Know. I don't know.
You're looking at Bill in year 25.
All I know is if everybody sitting at home is going, wow, the best receiver in football needs to be double
It's
teamed.
not rocket
the head
science.
coach, it's his responsibility.
I agree. I agree with that.
It's not that complicated.
But I agree,
It really
and that's
is
why
not that complicated.
I phrased the question to Tim of, you're not necessarily going to suggest the call, but you're at least going to say, hey, what are we doing there? Like, let's clean that up or fix that. But if he hasn't sat in on the meetings all week on the defensive side, but he's not going to make the adjustment.
No,
but
he doesn't need to make the adjustment. He can say, guys, there's a building on fire over here, and we've got no firemen on it.
Put some water on it, please.
Yes. So he's the fire chief.
I think that's fair. Tim?
That happens, doesn't it, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it happens. A coach is definitely going to, look at the defensive coordinator, even if he's not in a lot of communication with him, and say, hey, man, why are we not stopping that? Like, adjust something. But, like I said, it's, I don't know how they do it there. I don't know how vocal Stefanski is with his staff. I'm just saying, from what I've seen with the staffs I've been a part of, that's kind of the way it leans as far as head coaches and coordinators communication, during a game.
Progression for Watson. I know you said, you had him at a D for the last game, maybe a B- for this game. What were some things that you saw that you liked? What were some things that you saw that concern you?
Okay.
Probably things I liked, seeing him make the throws down the field. He was a lot more accurate on those deep out patterns, those throws across the middle. I saw him moving well in the pocket. I thought he had a good feel for for the pocket, where pressure was coming from, moving up. He made a couple throws. I remember one, he hit Peoples-Jones on an in route with a guy like pulling at his jersey, and the guy hit him in the legs. It was just an unbelievable throw. He made a lot of really, really good plays. Like you mentioned earlier, Jay, he did miss some opportunities. That would be the bad part. There were some plays off of play action where he had some deep crossers and some things like that where he just didn't take advantage of it. So he left a lot of yards out on the field. But like I said, it's his second game in over 700 days, so he's just kind of working his way back into this thing. But the progression from his first game to his second game, I thought was a really big jump for him.
Tim, I always say, people say you can't lose a game with one play. You can sure as hell give it away, though. I thought one of the big turning points of the game, once again after the fourth down where you throw the ball with the backup quarterback, it was the roughing the punter.
Dumb.
I'm looking at this from a perspective, and I asked myself, listen, as a special teams coordinator, why would you even be in punt block? Why are you not in
punt return right there, right?
That's a return, Tim.
They would have great field position.
They punted the ball inside their own 20. Even if he catches it, he's still now it's 0-0. You got room, but you give a person who's very inexperienced, a guy who hasn't played, an opportunity to do something stupid by trying to block a kick when nobody blocks it. What is this, Frank Beamer? Ain't nobody. Virginia Tech is the only school that blocks kicks. No one else has that right. I was so confused.
Now, real quick, Tim, before you answer that, Kevin said they were just trying to bring heat because this was the fourth time. This was his fourth game ever in the NFL.
Yeah, but he'd been with the Bengals for 2 years.
No, listen.
And you trying to justify it.
I'm not trying to justify it.
Go ahead.
The player ultimately screwed up.
I'm trying to ask Tim, is there a difference in pressure and actually coming after the block? Is it the same or is it different? That's what I'm trying to ask you.
There's a difference there. If you just want to put pressure on the guy, make him hurry up his process, there's that. Then there's an all-outs come out, we're going to try and block this thing. And it looked to me like the Browns were trying to block it. But I agree, man. You just go back to Peoples-Jones. He just ran a punt back. Was that last week or the week before? He's got an opportunity to run this thing back. Let's get a full-on punt return set up for this guy. And then, even if you fair catch, you got great field position. So
yeah, DBJ was standing at the 40. They were going to have. I'm not defending that. I'm just trying to see is there a difference. Tony
Fields is the most to blame over anybody.
That's not even it's not on Prefer.
He tackled the punter.
Yeah, it's not on Prefer. It's totally on Fields.
Prefer sucks, but the players screwed up.
Here's the problem. Nobody seems to have a understanding the situation of the moment.
It's situation
of the moment.
Right.
You don't run that. You just don't at that point.
Nobody's arguing, but we can't give the player a pass.
Left in the quarter. I don't need to shoot with 20 seconds. I'm going to shoot with 3 seconds left.
So to your point, Brad, on that, the one thing that all great coaches will do is take responsibility for their players' penalties.
Yes.
Ultimately, the player commits the foul.
Yeah.
But the foul is being committed under the coach's regime. Is he tolerant of these things? Is this a problem? The Browns, I believe, are 24th in the league.
6.4 in the league with 6.4 penalties per game.
Yesterday they had 9. Guys, they gave the Bengals a full 98 yards, almost a full football field.
That first touchdown drive was all.
The Ronnie Harrison defensive holding.
Yeah.
Both touchdowns.
That kept the drive going that led to a touchdown.
Yeah.
I don't think the Browns were that far off yesterday, but again, it's what we talk about every week, which goes back to the coach.
Layers.
It's the accumulation of the little things.
It's the layers.
That's why this team is 5-8 and outside of the playoffs.
That is reflective of when you I don't care what sports you play, when there's a lot of turnovers, penalties, whatever, that's a direct reflection on the coaching.
Yes.
That's the direct
discipline.
The discipline that is not there.
Let's let Tim hit. Tim, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, Tim, great stuff.
We appreciate it.
Great stuff.
All right, appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you, man.
We'll see you next week.
I think when it comes to, listen,